Hello, hello. Happy Sunday. Oh my gosh. I thought that I would hop on and read a story from the Chronicling America Historic American Newspapers database. It's a short, hello, thanks for being here. It is a short story titled Ghost Stories. And it's talking about ghost stories, but it's also in the process gives us a ghost story or two. Hello. Hey, friend. How are you? How is everyone? So I am I'm digging through the Chronicling America Historic American Newspapers database that I talk about a lot on this page here, and that I've read stories from before. And I found a story from the San Antonio Daily Light from March 22nd, 1889. And it is simply titled Ghost Stories. And it's a fun little read. And so I thought I would hop on and read it to all of you. Because it is now September, so, I mean, look, it's spooky season, right? Although, it's always spooky season if you're weirdos like us, right? Anyways, it has been a second. It has been a second, perhaps a minute, if you will, a whole minute, but since I have done a spooky newspaper reading from the Chronicling America database. But yeah, so if you have not heard me talk about, yes, facts. It's always spooky season if you're weirdos like us. Yes, see, I knew it. If you have not heard me talk about Chronicling America before, let me just briefly tell you, it is a freely accessible, database provided by the Library of Congress. And so that means that you can get into, this database and look at all of the things that I share and find more of your own, so much more. It is a historic American newspapers database, and it's searchable. It's got a bit of a new interface, and so if you have used it in the past, you'll notice that they've updated their website. So, just it looks a little different, but it's all still basically the same. And you can find lots of cool paranormal things, but you can find much more than that. So much more than just, paranormal stuff in Chronicling America. But I love to use it to find spooky, readings to share here with all of you. But I tell you what, I made heavy use of Chronicling America, the Chronicling America database, when I was writing my third book, Haunted Libraries Around the World, which will, be out at some point later this year. I don't know when. But anyways, so I used it one of the really cool ways that you can use it is, you can search a phrase and you can think of an address as a phrase, right? So you can search 123 Main Street, and then add an extra keyword of Louisville, Kentucky or whatever. And you can see if anything comes up, right? Maybe there's an entry for any sort of event that happened at that location, information related to the people who used to live there. That's also a really great way to find names of people who, used to live at, an address. And, maybe they will be salacious stories. But I always I always love finding the results on September 7th, 1925, so-and-so living at 123 Main Street in Louisville, Kentucky had their 16th birthday party and invited here's the people they invited, and here's all the games they played, and here's what their, parents like served for the luncheon or whatever. And I just love like getting that information and thinking about that. And I don't know. Can you imagine like what you could do with that if you were like somebody who like lived there like now and was having like activity, or I don't know, how they could like maybe like recreate that party. Anyways, I think you guys are looking forward. Thank you. I am looking forward to it being out in the world as well. I have been explaining it to people as this third book is it's my love letter to libraries and the ghosts within them. And yeah. It's a very meaningful book all of mine are meaningful to me, because I don't want that to sound like, egotistical or, whatever, but like they're all meaningful to me. But this one especially is, I think, like, it's just different because it's not part of, my other two are, reference books, almost textbooky in a way. Textbooky is just a new word there. But this one is not part of like a reference, series. It's just a broader general work. And so I had the license to be just a little more, just to write differently than I did with the other two. So anyways, and I inserted quite a bit more of my own like thoughts and opinions and takeaways and, experiences. So, all right, let's get into the story that I wanted to share with you. This is titled Ghost Stories, and it is from the March 22nd, 1889 edition of the San Antonio Daily Light. And I am using the Chronicling America database to find it. So let's get into it. Ghost Stories, subtitled Yarns Told to the Little Ones, but the Elders Listen Too. I love that. This article it's so cute. So let's get into it here. Subtitled. Another reason that I love these like old newspaper articles is because they have like subtitle upon subtitle upon subtitle, and I just love it. As an academic, it's hard to step away from that academic voice. Yeah, for sure. The process of writing this third one was it was interesting because I have gotten used to writing with a bit more of like quite a bit more of a formal tone. So it was lots of reasons that it was, I think that you will hear me more in this one than you do in the other two by just the nature of the book. So, all right, let's get into this newspaper article from, when did I say this was from? 1889. All right. Ghost Stories, subtitled Yarns Told to the Little Ones, but the Elders Listen Too. Subtitled The Test of a Ghost Story is the temperature in the vicinity of the spinal column. Some of the old timers that are now almost forgotten. I love the way that I also just like love the way that things were phrased and like the way things were written. In, these old newspaper articles, like the test of a ghost story is the temperature in the vicinity of the spinal column, which is like just a fun way to talk about getting a chill up your spine, right? I love it. Okay, let's get into the actual article here. It is to be hoped that not many persons are proof against the weird fascinations of a regular old-fashioned ghost story. A ghost story, that is a good one. So thrilling and so graphic, so fearful and so plausible as to send the cold chills racing up and down one's spinal column is as good in its way as a love story. That is a banger of a sentence. I love it. Look, I love it so much. I love it so much. I'm gonna reread that sentence. A ghost story. That is a good one. So thrilling and so graphic, so fearful and so plausible as to send the cold chills racing up and down one's spinal column is as good in its way as a love story. It is poetic. I love it. The telling of ghost stories seems to be almost a lost art. It is rarely that a good new one gets into print. We seem indeed to have outgrown them, to have so much keener facilities for seeing through them and explaining them away that they no longer appeal to us. Beyond all doubt, the crucial test of a ghost story, or any tale bordering on the supernatural, is the cold chills racing up and down one's spinal column. In fact, one had best trust to one's backbone than to one's brains in a recital of this kind. I love that. It's like saying, like, pay attention to the way that, like, you're responding in your body. Like, how is your body responding to this story? Not like what's happening up here, right? Frankenstein is considered to be a fearful book, but it requires a distinct effort of the imagination to thrill over the gigantic monster of one's own creating. In this sense, Poe's Black Cat is not so successful as his Murder in the Rue Morgue. These, however, cannot be called ghost stories. Years ago, there was published in the Harper's Magazine a ghost story entitled, What Is It? This next part is kind of wild. Okay. It was the story of a New York house that was haunted. A party of young students undertook to solve the mystery. They slept in the house, and during the night, something fell from the ceiling upon a bed and immediately began to grapple with the two men lying there. A terrible fight ensued, and the thing, capital T, the thing, it is always proper, polite, and more frightening to refer to a ghost as a thing. I mean, I don't know, kind of rude, but whatever. Capital T, groaned and breathed heavily, and the touch of it was something to freeze the blood in the veins. What? Finally, it was overpowered, tied down to the bed with a rope. Nothing was there. At least nothing visible. They could touch it, hear its breathing, see the bed shake with its struggles, but the thing itself was invisible. It finally died pitifully of starvation and was buried in the cellar. I mean, look, this took a turn. This took quite a turn. These incidents, recalled from memory after a lapse of many years, made the material for one of the best conceived and best related ghost stories that ever got into print. I mean, that, like, just imagining that scenario is kind of like wild. I'm curious if we could, like, find that. It says it was written up in the Harper's Magazine, and it was titled, What Is It? And it was prior to 1889. They did certainly have a way with phrase back in the day. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. This notion of, like, something falling from the ceiling, but it's invisible, but, like, if you reach out, you could feel it, and it would, like, give, like, a, what did it say? The touch of it was something to freeze the blood in the veins. Oh my God. This is wild. That, like, you could see it, like, thrashing about, but, like, you couldn't, like, you could see the, I guess, effects of it thrashing about, but you couldn't see the thing itself. This is freaky. This is freaky. I like it. All right. Let's continue. In polite society, a belief in ghosts is not exactly permissible, at least not in the kind that clank chains, persistently walk up and down stairs all night, and go through locked doors and stone walls. Nonetheless, even in polite society, they have their fascinations. I kind of feel like that hasn't changed much, you know? Like, You kind of have to, I feel like if you're going to talk about ghosts, you have to, well, I don't so much anymore. I'm not really concerned for the most part with how people are going to like receive that I'm like, super into this topic and I like talking about it or whatever. But I think that this statement written in 1889 is still generally true. It's like you kind of have to like, like suss out like the vibe. Like, what's the vibe? What's it going to be like if I start talking about ghosts with this like group of people? How is that going to be received? Anyways, nonetheless, even in polite society, they have their fascinations. And I think that part is also true and always has been true, that like, even though the topic might be a little taboo, no matter who you are, there's always a fascination. You can always find somebody in any group that you can think of that is going to have a fascination in this topic, right? There are always people who think you're weird, but in any group you're, look, see, right, look, you just said what I said. Yeah, you get it. Okay. Mr. Frank Stockton, we believe it was, who told very closely the story of a rich American family who became owners of a haunted house in England and who refused to be downed by any bloated British shade of however musty antiquity and renown. Oh my God. Brutal. Like, is that how they're talking to the ghost? Like, geez Louise. Well, yeah. So the story of a rich American family who became owners of a haunted house in England and who refused to be downed by any bloated British shade of however musty antiquity and renown. I would be honored to have a ghost of musty antiquity. I mean, look, that seems, maybe the reason the ghost was like making its presence known is because these people sound like super uppity. Anyways, they were considerably pestered by the ghost, but provided it with oil to limber up its rusty chains. I mean, that's a little nice. Like, hey, like, ghosty, like we notice you're clanking a lot. We're going to set out some oil for you. And, don't know if you know what it is, but, use this and, be a lot quieter. Thanks. I mean, it's a nice effort. They are trying. Okay. They were considerably pestered by the ghost, but provided it with oil to limber up its rusty chains. With a patent annihilator, they removed the deadly bloodstains and finally wore the ghost out. I'm not sure. Use your imagination. We beg pardon, revealed its unburied bones, to which they gave a decent burial, and they lived ever after in peace. I love it. Ghost's gonna ghost, but if you could keep it down a bit. Yes, I feel like, that's all any of us are like, that's all we can ask for, right? We're just like, hey, we're like coexisting, but you got some rusty chain. You're a little clanky. You're a little loud. I mean, what can we do? What can we do? I feel like that's just like, in the spirit of good, the spirit of, compassionate roommate, being compassionate roommates there. With a patent annihilator, they removed the deadly blood stains and finally wore the ghost out. What does that mean? Like, were there like blood stains like somewhere, and they, like, once they cleaned them, like then the ghost like revealed its unburied bones? And look, I don't know. To which they gave a decent burial. That part is nice. I feel like, okay, anyways. And they lived ever after in peace. Okay. In England and in many parts of this country, a family ghost is an inevitable part of one's pedigree. I love that. and just the way that like they phrase that. Like, can you imagine like being at like a party at like this like grand like English like manor, and like this is like 1889, and you're talking about like, oh, the ghost or whatever, and someone's like, well, it's just an inevitable part of one's pedigree. This is how we should just start responding when people are like talking about ghosts today. Like, it's just an inevitable part of one's pedigree. I love it. It is thought as much of as a coat of arms. That's kind of sweet. That's kind of cute. And it makes me think that like there should be like ghost like heraldry. I love it. Like, get the ghosty a coat of arms. Okay. It is thought as much of as a coat of arms, and while the owners pretend to disbelieve in it themselves, let me scroll to the next column. While the owners profess to disbelieve in it themselves, I'm still scrolling. Almost there. They certainly like to make it appear that everyone else is far from being so rational. There we go. Ghost heraldry. Yes. Oh my gosh. So that passage is kind of fascinating because yeah, it's like there's this like this tension between like knowing and accepting like culturally that ghosts are inevitable, but also like not being so, I don't know, like not talking about it so much that you're like, oh, like you've like crossed the line of like proper etiquette or something. I don't know, it's weird. The article continues. In a certain fine old family house in Missouri, the family ghost appears only in the mirror of a certain room. Oh, that's freaky. That's freaky. Just seeing the ghost in a particular room, but then just seeing the ghost in the mirror of a certain room. Why are things in mirrors so creepy? A shield with a banshee on it. I mean, now I'm like, I can't help but pick, like, should this be a craft night? Should we just all like hop on? I'll just like hop on live one night and just be like, we're doing crafts. We're doing ghost heraldry. And you can just, create a coat of arms for, maybe you have a ghost in your house. Maybe you just have a favorite ghost. Maybe you want a ghost in your house and you're like, I'm going to create a coat of arms for it, and like, whatever. Let's see here. I wonder if you owned a large manor or larger in a proper English estate, if one enters the transaction expecting it to be haunted. I mean, I think so. I think that's what this, unknown anonymous staff writer is getting at. That if you do purchase an English manor, that you must accept that it is probably haunted. There's probably a ghost, and it might rattle and it might be clanky, and you might have to set out some oil for it. And yeah, a manor must have a ghost. I think so. Actually, now that like if I were house hunting for an English manor, Jesus Christ, wouldn't that be the life? I think I would be, hello. I think I would be, it would be a requirement. I'd be like, I don't want to see any English manors that have not had any stories of ghostliness, or I would even settle for just like general weirdness, like, I don't know, strange creatures, maybe whatever. Give me some weirdness. I don't want to see any manors that have had no weirdness about them. Don't show it to me. I'd be like the opposite of like, I feel like, people like typically don't want like a haunted house, like whatever. Like, don't tell me anything spooky that happened here. I don't want to know. I'd be like, no, find me the haunted house, the haunted manor. Is this manor haunted? No, Apologies, but I'm going to keep looking. Yes. Apologies, but it is an inevitable part of my pedigree that I must reside in a haunted English manor. So, next one, please. If the ghost had a coat of arms in life, it surely continues in death. Yes, I love it. I love it. The article continues here. In a certain fine old family house in Missouri, the family ghost appears only in the mirror of a certain room. Oh yes, back to mirrors. Are they so freaky? Like, what is it that truly is always like a little bit unsettling about mirrors? I asked my realtor if some place was haunted, and she said no, thank goodness. And I said, bummer, and she looked at me straight. Your realtor is not one of us, but you are, and I'm glad you're here. That is amazing. Bummer. Anne Marie, I don't know what you mean by that. Is that a typo? What is it about mirrors that scry? Oh my God. Okay. That typo, that mishap was wonderful. Yes, it was pretty funny. I can just picture your realtor's face. Like, what? But you know what? I bet there's like lots of people out there who would be like, no, I really need you to find the haunted house. Like, we just normalize it. Just normalize asking for the haunted. The typos are fire. I love it. Just some scrying and chill. Yes, you guys are amazing. Scrying and chill. Oh my gosh. So, okay, yeah, but truly mirrors are, they're just like a little freaky. I don't know. And like the notion of this house in Missouri, I'm not going to get past this like sentence. Clearly, this is, that's okay. A certain fine old family house in Missouri, the family ghost. I love that it's referred to as the family ghost. I love it. The family ghost appears only in the mirror of a certain room. Here we go. The reflection is that of a young woman with silvery white hair streaming down either side of her beautiful face. She is dressed in the costumes of the early part of this century. This article was written in 1889, so they're saying the early 1800s. That's an interesting, because I feel like all of this, or not all, but I don't want to speak in absolutes like that, but I feel like a lot of ghost stories that talk about like, you know, the ghost with like long white hair are always like older, you know, like women or like crone sort of figures. But this says here, the reflection is that of a young woman with silvery white hair streaming down either side of her beautiful face. I don't know. I love it. I'm just like picturing this like entity. Speaking of, let me segue for a minute and talk about a ghost story that I was given in Baltimore, and then how I shared that ghost story yesterday with some people. And I got two more stories about this like same, like the same sort of basic like ghost setup in the story. Okay, I'm not wording very well because I have used up all my words. I've used up all my words in writing the book. And look, I'm actually like, I'm joking a little bit, but I'm like mostly not joking that I have truly kind of lost my ability to like string words together. My brain is a little melted. Anyways, let me tell you the story. Okay, so I got into an Uber in Baltimore, and the Uber, you know, like some Uber drivers are chatty, some of them are not. Like, that's totally fine. Like, whatever. Especially because, like, after a day in the archives or whatnot, my brain is usually like, and when I was in Baltimore at the archives, I had, just finished my book like 2 weeks prior. So my brain was even a little meltier than it is now, or perhaps just as melty. Anyways, whatever. I got into an Uber, and the driver was a little chatty and was asking, like, if I was like visiting, like, this or that. And I just like I had no reservations. I just tell him, like, yeah, I'm doing some research at the UMBC archives, looking at their parapsychology collection, things like, ghosts and extrasensory perception. And because he was like, what's parapsychology? And I just, told him or whatever. And he nodded and he was like, I think I saw a ghost once. And I was like, if you are comfortable sharing, I would love to hear your experience. And so he told me that he was driving somewhere in Baltimore. He didn't tell me exactly where, and even if he did, like, I don't know Baltimore. Anyways, but he didn't like say specifically where. It was just somewhere in Baltimore. He had gotten onto a merge lane to hop onto the interstate. And as he was in that, like, merge lane to get up on the interstate, he said that it was as if out of nowhere, this woman just appeared in the middle of the road. And he was like, I was driving, so I was paying attention to the road, and it was like all of a sudden she just was there. And he was like, I don't know how she could have, like, gotten from like the side of the road to the middle of the road so quickly and escape like my, like perception or notice or whatever. And then this is the freakiest part. Well, I mean, it's all kind of freaky, but he said she was just smiling real big, looked like super happy, as if she wasn't standing in the middle of like an interstate on-ramp getting ready to be like flattened. And he said she was dressed in just like normal everyday clothes. He was like, she had a t-shirt or a sweatshirt on that had some sort of writing, but he couldn't tell what the writing was. And he swerved, hit the brakes and like swerved, and he didn't hit her, and he kept like going, but he was like, what? I think he said he went a little ways down and found a spot to like pull off, and he said that he called the police because he thought this person was in distress because of the fact that she was like smiling, and just seemed like so happy to just be like in the middle of it. Anyways, and that was his story. And he was talking about how that when he shares that story, that he has shared that story with people, like after it happened, especially, and that, most people he shared that with, they were just like, oh, it was probably just, definitely wasn't like a ghost, or you just like imagined the whole thing. Like maybe you were tired, maybe you were like, I don't know, like you thought you saw, but I'm just like, no, like thank you for sharing. Like I fully believe like what you're telling me. Like I'm acknowledging this experience, and I was telling him, I was like, one of my initial thoughts is, like, what if that happened to you so that, like, you swerved and spent, like, the extra couple of seconds it took to swerve, and then later pulled off on the side of the road so you can make a phone call? And, like, what if you had, like, kept going? Like not seen that woman, not swerved, not stopped to make a phone call. Like, what if you had kept going down the road and then like gotten in an accident or something. Like, I don't know. It's just one way of looking at, I like in talking about it too, I try to not, I wasn't offering that to him as like, this is exactly why it happened to you and I have the answer. No, I was just like, that just makes me wonder. Like, it makes me think a lot of things. Like, I don't know, do you think about that? And he was like, yeah, I do actually think that exact thing. Or he's wondered that. Anyways. So I was sharing that story with someone yesterday, and she was like, oh my God, one of my friends just told me a very similar story about seeing just a woman in the middle of the road in, I think, somewhere in like West Virginia. And in this instance, there was another person in the car who didn't see a thing. And they were like, why are you freaking out? Like, I didn't see anything. What are you talking about? And it was a woman in the middle of the road. So then that friend and I, we go to another location to actually prep for some events that are coming up at Witch's Brew Coffee in Louisville, Kentucky. September 27th, October 4th, and October 11th, Boo 812 and our good friend, Jared Howell, are teaming up with the owner of Witch's Brew Coffee in Louisville to have a magic show, and that's got like seance vibes, and then a paranormal investigation afterward. So we were doing like a test, the gals of, Boo 812. We were doing just like a test investigation to get a feel for the space and whatnot. And so we hopped over to Witch's Brew, and we shared that story there. And then the owner of Witch's Brew had a very similar story of like just the woman in the middle of like the road. And we were, what is happening? Like, anyways, I don't know. I don't even know how I segued from this like article to the woman in the middle of the road. I don't know if any of y'all have that roadmap of how we got there. Does it matter though? We take journeys. We take journeys on these lives, and we go where we go. And that's just how it goes. All right. So we're reading this newspaper article. Let's get back to it. I just thought it was like, so let's get back to it and then continue to segue. I just thought it was really interesting that I shared that story about like a ghost story that an Uber driver in Baltimore gave me. And then I heard it 2 more times, like a version of it, a version of the same experience. I heard it 2 more times that night. What's happening? What is happening? Just like the women showing up in the middle of the roads. Okay, now let's get back to the article for real this time. Okay. In a certain fine old family house in Missouri, the family ghost appears only in the mirror of a certain room. That's real spooky. Synchronicity is so fun. Synchronicity is fun. The reflection is that of a young woman with silvery white hair streaming down either side of her beautiful face. She is dressed in the costumes of the early part of this century. An enticing Virginia story is that of a pair of scissors held in a shadowy hand. What the hell? Snipping papers, clothes, even the hair upon the heads of the inmates of the house. That just means like people who live there. I think it's so funny that like they use that phrase, like the inmates of the house, to just talk about like the residents, the people who live there. And like today, that's obviously got very different meanings. Even the hair upon the heads of the inmates of the house, and which very probably considerately stood on end for the convenience of this mysterious barber. What? That is hilarious. Okay, look, that line is pretty funny, right? Like, oh yeah, it's just a mysterious barber, but there's some ghost in Virginia that's just like walking around with a pair of scissors, just like cutting whatever, like snipping some papers, snipping clothes, snipping people's hair. What is happening? I do think that's kind of funny though. That would be pretty terrifying though. I feel like if my, you know, I mean, this was in Virginia, but like if I was, let's say, you know, let's go back to this imaginary English manor house. I feel like if my ghost was doing that, I'd have to have a talk. I'd have to have a real, like, sit down roomie where we need to have like a talk. Walking around with scissors, just seeing scissors floating through the air, just cutting things. It's a little intimidating, to be honest. I think we'd have to set some boundaries. We're going to have to set some boundaries. But now I'm also sitting here thinking, like, if you like to cut things, would you like to cut out some, you know, at, like, you know, the holidays, like in December or something, be like, would you like to have a craft night and we can sit down and cut out, like, snowflakes together? That would be pretty fun. Yeah, exactly. What if the ghost started making paper dolls? But then what if, like, the paper dolls, like, kind of, like, looked like the people in the house? I don't know. Anyways, but yes, paper dolls. Leave out scrapbooking stuff to keep them busy. See? I think, yeah, we definitely have to, like, set some boundaries around, like, the scissor wielding, because that is a little troubling. I love it. Or also, if you did need a haircut, how great would it be to just, like, A, not even have to leave your house, and B, like, a free haircut. I mean, you know, what are the downsides, right? Or silhouettes. That would be, silhouettes. Yes. Oh my God. That would be so spooky. The possibilities are endless. Love it. And maybe the ghost just needed, like, maybe this ghost from Virginia just needed some inspiration, just needed some craft nights, right? And, like, wasn't being, like, acknowledged. And so it resorted to, you know, just cutting random paper and clothes. Anyways, in the same mansion, okay, now it's a mansion in Virginia. In the same mansion, a woman dressed in scarlet is seen shaking a white cloth from a garret window. That's interesting. After her appearance, it being well understood that she is a ghost, fresh, wet bloodstains are found on all the piled stores of linen in the chest of the linen closet. What is happening in this house? Wait, an enticing Virginia... Is that enticing? Is it? An enticing Virginia story. Okay, the pair of scissors held in a shadowy hand, snipping papers, clothes, and hair. In the same mansion, a woman dressed in scarlet is seen shaking a white cloth from a garret window. After her appearance, it being well understood that she is a ghost, fresh, wet bloodstains are found on all the piled stores of linen in the chest of the linen closet. What? That one actually would probably, like, irritate me more. That one would probably irritate me more than if I, like, found like I don't know, a blouse, like, cut to shreds. I mean, that would irritate me too, but I'd be like, okay, well, I'll get you some, like you said, I'll get you some scrapbooking stuff. I'll get you some paper, but the finding blood stains on all of your piles of linen in your linen closet every time this ghost makes an appearance. Are you kidding me? No. A, that's too much laundry. B, I don't even know if you could, like, get those blood stains out. So what, are you just constantly, like, rebuying, like, linen? That might actually be a deal breaker. I would once again have to have a chat with that ghostie about boundaries and be like, I will get you your own special set of linens that you can make a bloody. But you're going to need to limit that to your own linens because that's too much laundry. It's too much laundry. And I really just don't think you would get all the blood stains out. I mean, I don't know. That's wild. That is a wild story. I've never heard that version of a ghost story. We need to talk. Yes. Once again, we need to talk. It would be like, it would look kind of like a seance. Like I'd be like sitting at the table with like, you know, the candles like surrounding me and like sitting there like all serious. But then I'd be like, oh, we need to talk. We're going to talk about boundaries. Gather round, ghosties. The article continues. There's just a little bit more to it. New Orleans is full of haunted houses. A story is told of one house where no human power can keep the doors fastened. They fly open in spite of bolt and bar. The old haunted house on Royal Street is known to everybody, and its tale has been told in every newspaper in the land. At one time, this house was used as a school, but it is said that all the board of directors had not power to make the pupils attend from any district. What? Anyways, the old haunted house on Royal Street is known to everybody, and its tale has been told in every newspaper in the land. But it doesn't go into much detail. I don't know. There might be enough like context there for us to like go digging and see if we can find that. Because that's just where that mention of this ends. It's a haunted house on Royal Street. It's in New Orleans, and it used to be a school. That might be enough to like dig into the newspaper database. You could use keywords like Royal Street, New Orleans, school. You could use ghost, haunted. You could, any combination of like, you know, all of those things or a combination. And it goes on to talk about, the article goes on to talk about how like some people are not afraid of ghosts and accept them as innocently as a little child accepts fairies and Santa Claus. But the tales they tell are crude and inartistic. What? Let's see here. Writing. Okay, let's see here. Oh, the article ends. Children are brought up to have a horror of ghosts. That is, they are taught to believe in them. Children cannot be better taught than that the only use for a ghost story is to while away an idle hour and to give an amusement mingled with fictitious fear, which we thus willingly nurse to keep it warm. And that is where the article ends. But I love that phrase. Like the ghost story. Like the ghost story is to while away an idle hour and to give amusement mingled with a fictitious fear, which we thus willingly nurse to keep it warm. That is such a perfect description of the lure and like just the enticement of a ghost story, right? Is that, yeah, often are like an amusement, and that fictitious fear, and like keeping, like nursing that fictitious fear is, I don't know, it's like enticing to humans, right? It makes me think of like, you know, going to see scary movies, right? Like it's an enticing, enjoyable, fearful thing. I read that ghost stories were a Victorian Christmas tradition. Yeah, we need to bring that back. Absolutely. Gosh, like I'm like, yeah, movies. So like I went to go see The Conjuring, right? And I have thoughts. I enjoyed it up until a certain point. And then I think it got a little I don't know. Like, as a friend of mine said, less is more, right? Like when it comes to spooky movies, and that's just me. Like maybe like everybody can enjoy like what they like, right? But I like the sort of like less is more, where it's like, I don't know, it leaves a lot to the imagination, or it's like implied that like the thing is there, but you don't like fully see it, sort of thing. Anyways, so I mean, like whatever, I would go see it, like, but I would tell you to go see it, like if you enjoy scary movies, but at a certain point, it just kind of like definitely jumped the less is more shark, if you will. But that's all right. I mean, I don't regret it. But I love the way that they ended this. Yeah. The ghost story as a way to while away an idle hour, to give amusement mingled with fictitious fear, which we thus willingly nurse to keep it warm. Love it. So this was the article titled Ghost Stories, published in the March 22nd, 1889 edition of San Antonio Daily Light. So enjoyable. And I found it using Chronicling America, Historic American Newspapers. And yeah, I love the little snippets of like ghost stories that we got through this. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of this is still applicable to like how we, I don't know, think about ghost stories. Like at the beginning of this article, let's go back, right? A ghost story, that is a good one, is so thrilling and so graphic, so fearful and so plausible as to send the cold chills racing up and down one's spinal column. And then they say the telling of ghost stories seems to be almost a lost art. So this was written in 1889, and I think a lot of people would say that today. Like the telling of ghost stories seems to be almost a lost art. I mean, I feel like I have heard people saying that and like heard people talking about it in that way. It's rarely that a good new one gets into print. They continue, we seem to have outgrown them, to have so much keener facilities for seeing through them and explaining them away that they no longer appeal to us. I mean, these sentiments, I think, are all sentiments that people might say today, right? But so that's kind of interesting to me. Like the ghost story in many ways then is a very classic sort of timeless thing, not only in like the ghost story as a story itself and that fictitious fear that we like to keep stoking, right? But also the way that I kind of think about ghost stories too seems to be timeless as well. There's some sort of sociological observations that can be made there, but my brain is too melty to take that any further. So the ghost stories that were embedded throughout is we have the one about, New York, an article in Harper's Magazine titled, What Is It? That told us, I want to see if I can track that down, that tells us the story of a New York house that was haunted, and it says a party of young. So I'm curious in this part of the article, if it was already known that this house was haunted and that's why this group of young students like went there to go sleep. And then that's when they encountered that mysterious invisible thing that like descended from the ceiling and like fell on the bed. Or like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like where a New York house that was haunted, a party of young students undertook to solve the mystery. They slept in the house, and during the night, something fell from the ceiling upon a bed and immediately began to grapple with the two men lying there. I mean, 19th century Scooby Gang. I love it. I mean, I don't know. Let me do like a real quick search, like while we're just all here together. Harper's Magazine. Let's see if we can find it. Harper's Magazine. And we will search the title. What is it? And I'll just do it really quickly to see if we can find it. Oh, it looks like, what is it? Might have been a column, or I don't think I'm going to find it really easily. So I don't want to just like be staring like blankly off screen here for a long time. But anyways, we could probably track it down. There's enough clues, there's enough context information here that I think you could probably find it. Then we heard about, oh yes, the rich American family who bought a haunted house in England, who had a ghost that rattled in chains, and it was so loud they set out oil for it. I love it. I think that's cute. I think that is so cute. I love it. And then we've got the story about the house in Missouri with the ghost, the family ghost that only appears through the mirror of a certain room. And it's the ghost of a young woman with long silvery white hair. That is so freaky. That is so freaky. Now I'm just like, I was picturing like waking up in like the middle of the mirrors, they're just so freaky. Like now I was just picturing like I'm gonna go to sleep and I'm gonna like wake up in the middle of the night and I'm gonna see like my full length mirror, and I'm gonna like look at it and I'm gonna see a thing in the mirror. I'm so scared. Anyways, maybe I'll just like drape something over it. No, but then if I drape something over it, then it's just gonna look like a figure. It's going to look like a figure because I don't usually drape it, right? So I will forget in the middle of the night that I have draped it to stave off the horror of waking up and seeing like a ghost in the mirror. I will forget that that's why I have draped it and that that's what I've done. And it will just look like this big, shadowy figure in the corner of the room, and I'll get scared. So damned if you do, damned if you don't. I guess whatever. It's fine. Another third option is that I'll just forget all of this entirely. And that my brain is pretty melty. So that's actually probably what's going to happen. It's like those memes of like, have you guys seen those where it's like your pile of like laundry that's on the chair, like the laundry chair or like whatever object that, is, what you throw your laundry upon, is always like, looks like a ghost, like at 3 a.m., in the dark, where you're like, is that a ghost or like an intruder, like about to get me? Like, that's what it is. Also too, the raccoons and there is a skunk in this neighborhood. But like the raccoons, especially, who I hear like climbing like up, like, I think they're like climbing up the fence and like climbing up some vines, like in the yard. I like hear them in the middle of the night because the temperatures at night have been so nice that like I leave my window cracked. But because I hear them, right? I hear them rustling about in the middle of the night because I'm up late or I wake up really, really easily. And so I hear them, and it's always a serial killer in my mind. Toodles, thanks for being here. Anyways, it's never like, my first thought is never like, oh, it's just the raccoons again, like going about their nightly little journeys and escapades. The first thought is always like, it's just the serial killers have descended and it's my time. And then I will remind myself, oh no, it's just the raccoons. And then I'll get my Kindle. I'll turn on my Kindle and be like, well, now I'm awake and I need to read. I need to read myself to sleep again because I'm just a child. You would think that, like, isn't it interesting? Like, I don't know. Are any of like you weirdos like this too? Like, we're so into these topics of like the paranormal and ghosties and, weirdness and stuff like that I feel like, I don't know, when stuff like strange noises or whatever happen, I might be like, oh my gosh, is it a ghosty? But no, it's like always in my head, like, it's a serial killer. But that's also, I think, just because to me, like, I can watch horror movies all day, sleep like a baby, but true crime stuff, no. Like, that actually will give me wicked insomnia. I will not be able to sleep because that to me is like the real scary stuff. I live in the country, so when I look outside at night, I always brace myself for Bigfoot. I mean, fair. But are you like, is it like, is there like a fear like tinged with that? Like, oh my God, like I'm bracing for Bigfoot? Or is it kind of like also like, I hope tonight's the night I see Bigfoot, or a little bit of both? I don't know. Probably a little bit of both, right? I was just, Allie, Chad Michael Murray. Look, okay. The context behind that comment here. Allie, what was that documentary that you and I watched? It was a serial kill. It was a documentary about a serial killer. Was it a Ted Bundy? Anyways, some serial killer. I don't even want to remember. But Chad Michael Murray played the serial killer. The serial killer, and I watched it with my sister Allie, and I was talking about how I was going to get freaked out at night after watching this documentary with her. I was going to get freaked out when I hear the raccoons in my yard, thinking that it's Chad Michael Murray, and Allie said, you're gonna like pull open your door and scream, Chad Michael Murray, is that you? Oh, it's Ted Bundy. Oh shit. Definitely a little bit of both. Yeah, that's fair. I feel like I would, like when I've gone on, getaways that are like out in the country or whatever, I definitely have that like little bit of both, like hope too, like I hope I see something, and I hope that when I do, I'm watching it through the safety and comfort of just like looking through the window of a locked home, or like standing on the porch very near a door that I can quickly slam shut and lock. But how cool would that be? Okay, to be honest, also this is like gets us into another point that I was chatting with someone recently, and I was like, I hope that we never find, like, I don't know if this is going to be like a hot take or not, but I'm probably not. But I hope that we never find like definitive, like proof, like capital P, of like, let's say Bigfoot, right? What I do hope keeps happening though are these like personal paranormal encounters with things like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, or, like a Mothman or something like that. Like, I hope that people continue to have experiences, and see, strange things, but I kind of hope that we never get like that absolute proof, because to me, there's just something so beautiful about the mystery of it all. And the meaning that it takes for every single person. Let's see, I've had friends who have seen it, but not in my actual area, a few miles away. What? That is so wild. That's wild. When I was living in Bloomington, Indiana, going to school up there, I went to a talk at a nearby public library, and there was, let's see, the mystery keeps the world an enchanted place. Exactly, right? So like, why do I want absolute proof that like takes that, mystery and enchantment away? I just hope that we keep having like personal paranormal encounters, because the thing is, like, we have, like, there has been and continues to be lots of scientific inquiry into things like ESP and psychokinesis. And I mean, they have like, yes, the numbers, the statistical significance might be low in a lot of those studies, but in some of them they're not so low. But like, statistical significance is statistical significance. Like, they have shown in studies that like ESP, like some sort of extrasensory perception is happening. Now, how it's happening or what exactly that is, we still don't know. But yeah, it's like, I don't know. Yeah, there's something about, I hope that we never figure the entire thing out. I hope that there are always missing pieces, which is the mystery and enchantment. But yeah, when I was living up in Bloomington, I went to a talk at a nearby public library, and it was a person talking about their own encounters with strange creatures living or that were sighted and experienced in the Hoosier National Forest, which runs, up near and through or at least very near parts of Bloomington and Monroe County, Indiana. And some of the stories were like wild. And I was like, this is great. This is the best thing. So yeah, it's also, I feel like more and more, though, I feel like more and more, like my sort of take on the paranormal, which is just my own. Nobody has to think what I think, or should think what I think, like, come to your own conclusions. But I think that the paranormal is often meant to be a very personal experience. And what I mean by that is that I often think that like whatever weird thing like happened, like if a person tells you a weird thing that happened to them, like it was only meant for them in that moment. Like, maybe them singularly or them, like maybe they were with a group or whatever, but like it was in that moment, it was just meant for them, like that. And like that is like inherently like the meaning behind it. You know what I mean? Like it was meant to deliver an impact to those people at that point in their lives, right? I don't know. Maybe that's a little too broad and philosophical, but I don't know. That's just kind of like where I land on it more and more as I read about the topic and, listen to people talk about it, and the encounter becomes part of your lore. Absolutely. Absolutely. So this absolutely like one example of what I mean by this is that, okay, so back in February when I went to Strange Escapes in Tombstone, Arizona, it makes your life story more rich. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I love, the notion of like the paranormal becoming part of your lore, right? And like the thing happens to you because it's meant to make a mark on you, and like that is that's about as close as I get to like an answer, like, I don't know, answer with a capital A, which I don't really think like there are many when it comes to like the phenomena or whatever. But okay, so to illustrate an example of this, like what I mean by, I often think that like the meaning of the paranormal in our lives is to just have it be these often very powerful subjective experiences that either help you understand the world around you more, or think about the world around you differently, or even connects you with like people. Like if you're with a group of people that like something weird happened to, like it helps you like connect with them or view them differently, or I don't know. So back in February when I was at Strange Escapes in Tombstone, I was doing I was at the, Undertaker's Coffee is where I was stationed for the paranormal investigations. And it used to be, like the funeral home where they would, bring people and prepare them and whatnot, hence like calling it Undertaker's Coffee. So I was stationed there. And one thing that I did with people on the second night, because it was much smaller groups of people the second night, is I had a set of Zener cards with like the symbols, like the circle and the square and the plus sign and whatnot. And I had an audio recorder, and I was like, okay, I've got this idea. I'm gonna, pass this deck of Zener cards around to everybody, and we're gonna get the audio recorder going, and we're gonna explain that like we're playing a game, right? So you take the deck and you pull a card and you hold it up so that we can all see the symbol, and you ask the question, can you tell me the symbol on the card, right? And then after we do that, we'll listen back to the audio recorder, because I had one of those that like just records sound, so you can listen to it like a little quicker. So I was like, I don't know I'd never done it before. I was like, let's just see what happens. Right. So, it was the very last group of the entire night on the second day. So actually what that meant is that after the investigations were done that night, the whole conference was over. Right. So it was the very last group on the very last day, and we're all going around. Right. And, we finish, and I hit the, replay on the audio recorder, and you hear a woman, pick up a card, and she says, can you tell me the symbol on this card? And she had held up the plus sign. And when we listened to the audio recorder, you could hear when she says that, can you tell me the symbol on the card? You hear a voice say the word positive. You hear this like breathy, whispery voice say the word positive. And we were all like, when we played it back and listened, all of us were like, oh my God, and like, freaking out. And like, we replayed it like 10 times. Because I was like, what? Did you guys hear that? And it, like, when we first replayed it, a few of us definitely heard it. And then, I replayed it again. And like, more people were like, oh my gosh. I mean, literally, we replayed it like 10 times and everybody heard it. And like, so then I'm just like, this is amazing. This is wild. Somebody like even like posted about it. They were like, oh my gosh, we just heard like the most apparent EVP of like the night at this, the Undertakers or whatever. And so a few days go by, and I think to myself, I'm gonna dig out that audio recorder, and I'm gonna see if I can. I'm gonna pull up that file, and I'm gonna record it on my phone, and then post it on social media. Right. So I get out the audio recorder and I go to that file. The file is there. I go to that file and I click play, and I could hear myself explaining the game that we're playing. I can hear the other people like, asking the thing. And then I hear the woman say, can you tell me the symbol? And then nothing. It just moves on to the person who was next to her. The only thing you hear after her saying that is the person right next to her saying, can you tell me the symbol on the card? And the EVP was gone. Gone. What? What? So the only way that I can rationalize that in my head, I know that like files get corrupted, okay? And like there is file loss and like digital file corruption, and especially like every single time you play something, and like there is stuff that can get lost, okay? Like I know this, I will acknowledge that. But the only way that I can make sense of why that one word disappeared and everything else was there, is the fact that it just was meant for those of us who were in the room that night at Undertaker's Coffee in February 2025 at this conference for weirdos in Tombstone, Arizona. And it was only meant for us in the moment, and it wasn't meant to be shared. And I don't know. I like, the only way that I can really rationalize why it disappeared is that, it was just meant for us in the moment. It was just meant for us to like have a shared moment together, to have a shared strange, anomalous moment that I hope this is not egotistical to say, but I think probably became like a pretty cool, memory for a lot of people that like, maybe they think about from time to time, or maybe even informs their own thoughts about the paranormal. So that's the only way that I can rationalize it. And that's how I'm choosing to rationalize it too. Is it possible that some sort of like digital file corruption happened because that file, I was replaying it and replaying it and replaying it, and just that one, is it possible that like just that one part somehow got corrupted or faded out? Sure, I suppose. But I'm choosing to look at it differently. So that's what I mean when I say that like, I often think that the sort of reason for the paranormal, if you will, is to allow us to have these exceptional human experiences, to borrow from Rhea. Yeah. So, and to connect us to people, like that. It definitely, I feel like connected me to like the people in that room that night. I feel like it connected me to like the memory of that place, like Tombstone, Arizona. And yeah, I think that was like, why did that happen? I think that was the reason. So yeah, anyways, wow, that was a segue. Anyways, tonight's reading again was from Chronicling America, Historic American Newspapers, from the March 22nd, 1889 edition of the San Antonio Daily Light. And if you want to find more spooky stories of your own, you can go to Chronicling America because it is freely and openly available. And you can find all sorts of really, really cool articles about all sorts of spooky things. And not spooky things too. So you can use it for, I think it like it goes to like the late 1600s and goes up to like 1963. So it covers a huge period of time, and you can just find lots and lots of things. So I hope you enjoyed this. I've been wanting to, now that I'm, done with the book, I mean, not entirely. I have little things to do like the index and, collaborating with like cover art and formatting and so on and so forth. But those are all the fun bits. I mean, the writing, it was fun too. I don't mean to say it like that. That was perhaps not the best word to use. But like these are definitely the less stressful bits of writing a book, because truly the whole thing was fun to write. But I hope you know what I mean. Anyways, I'm hoping to do more of these because I have a little bit more time, and because spooky season is upon us. So thank you all for being here. And yeah, I will catch you next time. Bye.